some memories.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. I was working on this talk, and that just came to me. I was like, oh my gosh. So turn. To everything there's a season. To everything there's a flow. You know, this month in the Centers for Spiritual Living, the theme has been the flow of coming and going. Coming and going. Sometimes we get stuck, but maybe not. But everything changes. And I want to share with you, you might notice there's a little attachment to your bulletin today. Well, we have Eric Fulda to thank for this.
Thank you, Eric.
Eric's mentioned to me, and maybe some of you feel this way too, I told him he wasn't alone, that he goes home on Sunday and he says to himself, wow, that was a great talk, but I can't remember what she said. Or what was it about? Right? I mean, I've done that too. So he said, would you be willing to write a little synopsis? Now, I'm not sure this is what he wanted, but I went through my talk and I just highlighted a few things that I'm going to talk about. So Eric, thank you. It wasn't that difficult to do, and maybe some of you will appreciate it. Because you'll go home and you'll say, what in the heck was she talking about? And you can say, oh yeah, da-da-da-da-da. And that might refresh your memory. We could all use a little reminder. So thank you, Eric. Let's give him a hand.
I don't remember asking you to do this.
You don't remember asking? You came over to my house.
That's right.
I thought you were going to yell at me or something.
Eric has called me at 65.
So this month we're exploring how, in the face of life's constant changes and the noise of the world, have you noticed, we can maintain our self-awareness through our spiritual practices. And if you don't have any spiritual practices, now is probably a good time to start something. Such as meditation, being still, going out in nature. I mean, have you paid attention to what nature is doing with the flowers and the blossoming? We should be in awe all the time. So remember, when we do get in our heads too much, look outside. Go outside. And remember that rebirth that nature has. Because by awakening from our thoughts that keep us distracted from our true essence of who we truly are, we then can experience our wholeness and our divinity. Even in the flow of all that's going on. A few weeks ago, my talk was Let It Flow. And I talked about the 4 lets from the book that we had just studied. Let life, let it be, let it go, and let go. So today my talk is in the flow. I live, move, and have my being in the one. That's our affirmation. Let's say that. I live, move, and have my being in the one. Take a breath with that. Because you do. As students of spirituality, do you ever long to live what we call a spiritual life? Well, the truth is, we already are living it. If our belief in unity with the divine, the Creator, is true, then we're already connected to that universal presence, and we don't have to worry about doing so. And what may be confusing about our spirituality is that we also are human. Have you noticed? And some of the things we experience in our humanity may not look or feel very spiritual. So, what if we translated our spiritual inheritance, our divine nature, into our daily life? What if? So we can ask ourselves, am I mirroring deep spiritual qualities in my everyday life? Am I kind? Am I loving, creative, compassionate, willing to learn, willing to forgive, and be curious? Or am I mean-spirited, gossipy, critical, hateful, and closed-minded? Take a breath with that. How we answer these questions might give us a clue into how well we're using our power. The good news is, thank goodness, that we can self-correct at any time. You all know that have been studying this. We can change our minds. We can open to inspiration and guidance. We can modify our behaviors if we so choose. We can live lives more reflective of our natural spirituality and bring our light more into the world. Anybody up for that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like the song we just heard, turn, 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 to everything there is a season. This month in the Science of Mind magazine, Reverend Vermont Anderson wrote a beautiful article about reimagining the flow of consciousness. And it's kind of like how we are reimagining what this community is going to do. That's what we're going to talk about at the meeting coming up. Reimagining what's possible for us. So Vermont offers a clear reference to the flow of the state of coming and going. And he rewrote the ecclesiastical biblical story of to everything there is a season, which is what that song was about. And I'm going to read his version. For everything, a season, and a time for every matter in the consciousness of heaven. A time of birth, a time of death, and a time of life after life. A time to sow and a time to reap. A time to heal and a time to be healed. A time to forgive and a time to be forgiven. To break down, to build up, to dream and to act. A time to weep, to mourn, to comfort those who mourn. And a time to laugh, sing, and dance. A time to release what no longer serves and to embrace what does. A time to seek and a time to know. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to be loved. A time for life-affirming conflict, which results in peacefulness in the heart, mind, and soul of the individual and the collective in a world that works for all. So even though we hear about being in the flow and going with the flow, the truth is, as I said, we never are out of the flow of the divine. It's always with us. It's very much like all the biological mechanisms that we have. Our breath is a flow, our blood circulating, electrical signals through our nervous system. So what does it mean to be in the flow? Because I think that when we enter that state of embodied flow, it's like a master martial artist or a surfer on a big wave you watch, or a bricklayer that is so clear in what they're doing, or a master chef. Do you ever watch that show? So we move from being a technician to being an artist when we practice our spirituality through, again, like I said, meditation, stillness, prayer, whatever. And we move from being and creating in the zone. Have you ever been in the zone? I mean, I'm sure we all have at some point. It's that place where you're doing something and you're just immersed. There's no time, there's nothing else. You're just in it, 100%. And why? Because you're connected to that creative power of the universe. I love what Ernest Holmes says, our founder. I am guided by the same intelligence and inspired by the same imagination, which scatters the moonbeams across the waves and holds the forces of nature in its grasp. We all are inspired by that same intelligence if we so choose to connect to it, or not to connect to it, we already are, to recognize it, is what I meant to say. And I know some of us are very comfortable with where we are. We're like, I don't want to do anything different. And we may believe we don't need to change anything in our lives. We're in a comfort zone. Oh, I don't have any blocks. I'm good. I'm good. Are you really? And you may be. But, and, maybe no but, and, imagine for a moment if you actively lived consciously in and as the flow of spirit, connected, you knew that. Imagine, what will your relationships look like? What will your finances look like? What will your home look like? What will your health and well-being look like? What will the planet look like when we collectively live in the divine flow and from our spiritual nature? What if everybody did? Oh my goodness. Wouldn't that shift things? You know, I teach yoga still as part of my other life. And we do a thing called hip openers. If you've ever been in yoga, you know, hip openers, you sit there and it's like, oh, there's a lot of groaning, a lot of moaning when we do hip openers. And I remind my students often that one of my first yoga teachers, like 80 years ago, when we were doing hip openers and moaning, he said, hip openers make you kinder and gentler. And I've never forgotten that. So when I'm in the midst of moaning and groaning and I remind my students, you're getting kinder and gentler. And then I say, just unwind this tension, just unwind. Just say to yourself, I unwind this tension in my body. I unwind this tension. And eventually your body relaxes and you can go in a little deeper, maybe. So I love that. Because imagine when we practice from a place of center, no matter what's going on the outside, we notice it, we're aware of it, we don't put our head in the sand, but we're able to hold it in a way different place that's maybe more beneficial for our mental, physical, and emotional health. I think. That's why I teach classes, and I thought I brought my book, but I'm going to plug that class. It starts on Tuesday. To get back into the practice, to get back into remembering who we truly are. Because I know some of you are going through difficult things right now. And that's what this teaching is here to support you. To open to a new possibility. Let's affirm, I live, move, and have my being in the one.
I live, move, and have my being in the one.
I didn't hear you.
I live, move, and have my being in the one.
And the one can be any name you light up with. God, Spirit, Source, Creator, the Divine, the one and only, the thing itself, stuff, Joe Blow, I don't care. Whatever gives you that juice of, yes. So in the book study we just finished, What's in the Way is the Way, there was a beautiful reminder in the back of the book, a little butterfly story. So am I on target with the synopsis? I think I might be doing pretty good. Eric, how am I doing?
Doing great. Butterfly story.
So this is a story from Elizabeth Sahtouris, who is an evolutionary biologist. And it metaphorically illustrates the transformation that can happen in our consciousness. She says that relative to its size, the caterpillar is one of the most destructive beings on the planet. It can devour a whole tree branch in record time. Eventually, it weaves a cocoon around itself, and within that structure, fulfills its destiny to dissolve into formless goo. Goo is a scientific word. Out of that goo begins to emerge the first cells of the butterfly. These new cells are called imaginal cells. And the goo, the old, tries to destroy them. Because of this threat, the new cells gather together into groups, and in that support, a butterfly is born. The caterpillar in its self-absorbed destruction represents the old kind of mind that humanity has been living in. The caterpillar is necessary in the creation of the butterfly, but there comes a time when it has to die for the butterfly to be born. The butterfly, which represents the new use of the mind, is the opposite of the caterpillar. It doesn't destroy life, instead it serves life by pollinating flowers. It can also fly far and wide, so its view is much broader than that of the caterpillar. So as we grow into our butterflyness, we too can have a view that includes everything. What I call a bigger picture. So when we get all focused on what's not working, remember the bigger picture. So she says, know that no matter what's happening in your life, you are an imaginal self. You are part of the shift from separation to connection that is happening right now, and your life matters. It makes a difference how you choose to be with your life. Hear that, it makes a difference. You make a difference. As you clear the pathway from unconsciousness to consciousness for yourself, you're also clearing it for others and the world. Ooh. Every moment you relate to what life is offering you rather than from it, every moment that you're curious about what's unfolding rather than trying to control it, every moment you meet yourself and all beings with the spaciousness of an open heart, every moment you recognize that what's in the way is the way, and every moment you reconnect with the pure joy of being alive, you become a healing presence on the planet.
Yes.
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 Oh, yes. Wow. How you live your life matters. That's so powerful. That's just so powerful. Ernest Holmes, we are already inlets, but we must consciously become outlets. Let us surrender everything that denies its beauty and peace and enjoy the song and the dance and the joy of life. We have the right to choose what we wish to experience. Each of you has the right to choose however you want to experience life. To everything there is a season. Turn, turn, turn. So I say, let's surrender to the free-flowing power and presence of pure spirit. Let's lead from our hearts and stay connected and live in the flow. Are you willing?
Yes.
Say, I'm in.
I'm in.